Hi, good morning, everyone, and welcome to day 3 of the Inspiration stage here at Showcase. I'm Tom Watts, I'm Head of Design with the Design and Crafts Council, and I'm delighted to welcome you to today's talk in collaboration with the Irish Grown Wool Council. It's something we've been doing over the 3 days, and it's caused a huge reaction, certainly from a lot of people who've heard the talks over the 3 days. Today's talk about strands of innovation that are happening in the sector is very, very interesting. I've had a kind of a preview of the topics and really, really great. But one of the panelists today is representing a company called Eru, who I met here at Showcase last year. They were in the Leo Hall, and they basically grabbed me and told me that I needed to hear their story very badly. So it is an incredible story. They went on to participate in another competition that we run annually called the Irish Business Design Challenge, and they were incredibly impressive in that and were highly commended as part of the competition. We then produced a video about their story, which we're going to show you now, and this is literally the premiere of this piece, so I hope you really, really enjoy it. They actually went on to participate in the Accelerator with Trinity, which we're running again this year. Entries are open for that, which close on the 18th of February, so that's something that anyone in the wool sector is free to enter as well. It's an excellent program, and we had a great talk about that yesterday as well, which Zoe participated in. But yeah, delighted to introduce you to this incredible story, and after that we'll have Rebecca Morrison will be joining the stage again to moderate today's event. So enjoy.
I'm Zoe Daly.
And my name is Lionel Mackey.
So the seed of the idea started from my granny, who's an amazing hand knitter. And she knit my daughter a baby blanket 8 years ago. And it was made of wool. And it was like the most perfect thing I had for the baby. So this wool blanket just became such an integral part of caring for her. I realized it was so comforting. It was the perfect material for a baby. And because it was handmade for me, it was just really special. I wanted to start a little business. As a project, I wanted to basically recreate my granny's blanket with the most beautiful Irish wool. So I went on a journey to try and find the most perfect, beautiful Irish wool. I went to all the wool shops. It was just shocking because I couldn't find any Irish wool. When I met Lionel, I kind of had all this research and ideas, but really it was Lionel has a background in business as well, that the whole concept came together for Eru. Our company is called Eru, who is named after the patron goddess of Ireland. She's associated with fertility, abundance of the land, and sovereignty. So that's all the principles that we stand for. Sourcing and processing wool in Ireland. Wool is a very fertile, renewable resource, and we're working with the abundance of the land. We realised that, the main problem in Ireland is that all of the attention has gone into meat production. There's no incentive for wool production, hence it's why it's been degraded and devalued so much.
So the two breeds that we use are Blueface Leicester and Romney. The Blueface Leicester, they're known for their drape and their softness and the low micron, and the same with the Romney. The Romney would have a bit more body to the wool, and they're quite hardy. But I know all the Blueface Leicester farmers on a first name basis, so every year go around in a big van and big truck and collect it all from them. Literally weigh it there and then, pay them there and then, and they love seeing me because we give them a really fair price for their wool. Our mission statement is to put a value back in Irish wool.
As we grow, we want the network to grow, and we want to incentivize. We were world leaders in woolworking as an Irish community. We want to bring us back to that heritage and take all kind of the modern research around wool as a sustainable fibre and inject that into our business. So along the journey, just before I met Lionel, I found a woolen mill that was about to be shipped to Iceland. But it was so synchronistic because Lionel's family business involved a big warehouse here, and they had just cleared that out. And the mill that we were looking at fit in exactly to the warehouse that Lionel had literally just emptied. So we have a woolen mill sitting in the warehouse, and that's the next big part of our story. So we want to get that up and running. This is the heirloom baby blanket, what is based on my granny's original design. We use kind of always our signature stitches are the honeycomb. And then we have the family blanket. It's basically a multi-purpose textile. We have an accessory range that we created as well, with hat, snood and mittens. And just now, we're just about to launch our first line of knitwear. Winning the award was so validating because we've been working away at this idea for ages, and neither of us are from a design or a fashion or textile background. So to really kind of be meeting people and industry at a point where we're creating what people are asking for, this whole circular model, sustainability, to be recognized for that effort, it's been very validating. So we're really grateful.
Absolutely fantastic, Zoe. Congratulations to yourself and Lionel, and I look forward to hearing more of the Eru story when you join us on the panel. And congratulations as well as the overall winner here at Showcase. A fantastic achievement and really wonderful to hear. More of the story as it evolves. My name is Rebecca Marsden. I'm the manager of the Forge Design Factory, and I'm a member of the Wool Hub. I'm going to be joined on the panel today by another couple of Wool Hub members, and our focus is, as Zoe spoke to, looking at the sort of innovation and research that can drive the wool sector forward as well across all different areas. And I'm here on behalf of the Irish Grown Wool Council. The Irish Grown Wool Council is a voluntary body with an all-island approach, and really what its vision is to bring all stakeholders together to recognise the potential for Irish grown wool as a really wonderful, versatile, natural, sustainable material. And we're going to share in discussions with our experts here, who I'm going to invite onto the stage now. If you'd like to come and join me on the stage, we're going to learn about all the wonderful different strands of innovation happening across Irish grown wool. I'm going to sit actually there, if you don't mind, Zoe, sorry, and I'll... That's fantastic. So we're going to commence the panel discussion in just a few minutes, and then we're going to make sure that we leave a little bit of time at the end to engage with questions from the audience. So do please have anything that springs to mind that you'd like to pose to our panel. At the end, there'll be a roving mic and an opportunity to engage and learn more from the experts that we have. So Zoe, I might kick off with you, and just such a wonderful journey so far, many chapters to come, and I suppose the real kind of connection you have with the makers, the community that is growing and evolving through, these networks that are building. Could you talk a little bit more to that, and I suppose all these stakeholders that you're engaging across the journey?
Yeah, well, I think one of the things that I've been learning, and we were talking about on email, is that the skills that exist within our country, they're so inherent in us and they're so amazing that I think sometimes when you're so good at something, you don't recognize it as a skill. You take it for granted. So I think as Irish people, we can do that. We have these amazing skills that we've passed down that we almost don't realize are so incredible. But they're the reason that, Taylor Swift is wearing an Aran jumper on her front cover. And I think it's about valuing those skills. So for example, for us, that's what we do. I'm not the skilled knitter or I'm not the skilled farmer, but we work with those people. So we have a farmer, for example. He's the head of all our Romney, and he's a shearer as well. And he, like, it amazes me, but he just does this so naturally. He's been shearing all his life, and he tests the wool on his face. You know, that's when I ask him, like, how does he, work it all out? He's like, I just test it on my face. And like, for me, that's such a skill. Like, that's such it's something that's inherent in him. He doesn't think it's amazing. I think it's amazing. But because of that skill, he has bred, like, taken that and noticed every ewe he has, tested that, and he's curated a specific flock. And that particular line is all the line of Romney we use, and then the farmers that he sells them out to. So, that's something that's just in him that he learned, got passed down. That's an example of the skills I'm talking about. So we recognize those and champion those, and we say to him, we actually got sheep from him, from that line. And it's the same with, say, the knitters and the weavers we work with, and the millers. So they... with the knitters, for example, I suppose this was the inspiration from my grandmother. Like, she knit me that baby blanket. And again, it was that act of love that infuses this natural skill that she has, that was passed down from generation to generation, that she thought nothing of. She's like, oh, I just, that's the first thing, like, you're going to have a baby, make a baby blanket. And that is something like the Aran, like these things that travel the world, have lasted for generations. So I think it's like when we actually step back and look at these amazing things that we already have and champion those, extract them and champion them, and then put them together, we can create magic. And there's been a missing piece of that, which is the Irish wool piece. It's almost like this equation has become disconnected, but we're now in the process of putting it all back together. Yeah. So that's what we do at Eru, is take those inherent skills and try to piece them together into an offering.
And that wonderful, I think, amalgamation of skills and knowledge across all these areas is so key to carrying the story forward. And it's really wonderful to see the retaining of that knowledge and hopefully, the passing on from generation to generation.
And I think, like you say, that it's something that has to be embodied. This is like years ago, the grandmother would be knitting and the grandchildren would just absorb, this skill. But we don't do that so much anymore. We don't, like these skills, they have to be worked, embodied, used to be passed down. And I think, we can't just watch them on a screen. Do you know what I mean? So that's what we really need to kind of extract and reinvigorate.
Fantastic. I'm conscious that I wanted to give everybody an opportunity to introduce themselves on the panel. So what we might just do across our lovely panel of experts here is to give a moment just to briefly introduce yourselves to the audience. We've had a lovely preview of Eru and Zoe and your journey, but I might just continue on by inviting everybody to just briefly introduce themselves, and we'll continue on with the discussion.
So starting, I guess, with me. Hi, my name is Don O'Neill. I am a fashion designer, born in Ballyhigh, County Kerry. And I have spent the past 40 years of my career working in London, Paris, and in New York, primarily in New York, for the past 30 years. My area of expertise was evening wear and glamour. So you might wonder what I'm doing here on the Irish Wool Council. But I'm dressed head to toe in Irish wool to profess my love for all things Irish. But my perspective here today will be more from an international perspective and all things Irish and how we're seen from abroad. So I look forward to sharing that with you.
Lovely, Don.
My name is Tim Yeomans. I manage a research centre called Shannon Applied Biotechnology Centre. We're a technology gateway that's co-funded by Enterprise Ireland and the European Regional Development Fund. And I was part of the group that did the feasibility study for the Department of Agriculture around valorisation of wood and led up the research section of that. Always nervous of being described as an expert, but certainly happy to be here on the panel anyway.
Hello, my name is Nairi Takano. I speak slightly different to my other co-panelists. I grew up in Australia. I come from the country, Britain, but I don't like to say too much because I feel myself more Australian. I am living in Belgium now. I've worked within the fashion industry, but a background focused on traceability and transparency within the supply chain for textiles, but also crossed over into food and drink. But whilst growing up in Australia, I worked on sheep farms as a shearer, as a rouseabout, as a handler, as a sorter and a grader. And since me living in Belgium the last 3-4 years, I've had the pull back to working with wool. And one of that is looking at the scouring processes and the methodology of the washing and the processing of the wool, but also how we use a fleece, because a fleece has multiple uses and we only seem to be capturing a small part of the fleece. So hopefully I can share a bit more today, so thank you. And also a big thank you also to the Design Council as well. I'm very humbled to be here, to be sitting on the panel, and also the Irish Council as well. Thank you.
Hi everybody, my name is Eve Savage and I am educational designer for a project at Munster Technological University called the IKC3 project. It has a longer name. It's Ireland's Knowledge Centre for Carbon, Climate and Community Action. And we are building a national platform for sustainability skills, MTU along with Trinity College, Dublin and UCD. But also at MTU Kerry, we have the Circular Bioeconomy Research Group and the Circular Bioeconomy Cluster, who've been very heavily involved, I suppose, in the establishment of the Irish Grown Wool Council. And there'll be many discussions here moving forward. So you'll hear from everybody around some of the research and innovation that's being carried out. And also I'll be able to share some information on some programs that we've been running that are all around circular and sustainable design, incorporating wool for senior cycle students and third level students.
Fantastic. Thank you all. And I think what we'll do is, going from the homegrown beauty of Eru's gorgeous product to that international perspective, Don. And you and I spoke last week around the representation of Irish wool and textiles on the international stage. And I'd love to hear your perspectives and views on where it is now, what we see into the future, and how you've sort of, I suppose, journeyed through engaging with textiles like these beautiful tweeds and knit that you have over the years.
So just reeling it back to the international perspective, and having worked in New York all those years, the one thing we all have in our advantage here is they love everything Irish. And what we do in America, our heritage is so strong and it goes back so far, and there's such a huge connection to all things Irish. That is an incredible forte for all of us venturing into that market in whatever venture we have. And then within here, with the art, design, creative, the making community, the products that we make there is a huge appetite for what we make and do. And I think right now this is a very fortuitous moment that we're talking about wool and Irish wool, when in the market itself, in the designer market, the major design houses that set the trends, the most innovative designers, we have Kim Jones at Christian Dior, who for spring introduced tweed into his menswear market, but tweed with the canage pattern from the Dior archives woven into it. And then at Fendi, in the Fendi menswear market, they also used a tweed where they had the F Fendi logo woven into it. And then the most fashion-forward streetwear brand in Los Angeles, Amiri, also used tweed in their collection for spring. And then the trend continued, which is really important for everybody here, into the coming fall collections. So we have J.W. Anderson, obviously, who's Irish, but is considered by Women's Wear Daily as the most important innovative designer working today. And he had the Irish cable net front and center on his collection. So the sense of Ireland or Irishness on the runways, subconsciously and visibly, as setting the trends going forward in the menswear market, it's like perfect timing for the Irish wool market. And then Prada, we have Rafe Simons and Miuccia Prada, which are sort of the epitome of setting trends. They used tweed in the collection this season. There was the Donegal tweed, and then there was the oversized herringbone tweed that they used in suits, trousers, outerwear, coats, right across the runway. And what Rafe Simons said he was doing was he used the tweed to connect back to nature. And that basically it's the look of Ireland. To anyone who doesn't know any better, we don't know where that tweed came, but globally, the world sees tweed, the world sees that wool, and we assume it's Irish. And we would like to assume they bought it in Ireland, but they may not have bought it in Ireland. But it benefits all of us that that's the look that's right now in the zeitgeist. And that's for That's for fall of 24, and that will set trends that will continue into the future. It'll fill the magazines, it'll fill the bloggers, Instagrams, it'll be everywhere, and it's a perfect time for us, the Irish manufacturers, to capitalize on that new appetite for tweed and for Irish wool. And one of the reasons of what I'm wearing today, I just wanted to wear something a bit more contemporary. There is the traditional approach to tweed, there is the traditional approach to knitwear, but then there's the entire contemporary fashion market also, which is a huge market. But it comes and goes, it ebbs and flows, and right now there's a wave towards the fashion front and the more contemporary end, to which end I went dig in because I wanted myself a fabulous jumper or sweater to wear here. So I found a knitter in Ballyhaig and I designed this jumper, and the lovely Barbara Cosgrove, who's a local woman, actually she works in my doctor's office, she's the local secretary, but she's one of thousands of women that sit at home by the fire at night while she was watching Poldark. She calls this the Poldark jumper. And she's knitting at night, and that's a huge industry in Ireland alone, just with the knitters at home. But I got this wonderful jumper with this beautiful wool from Kerry Woolen Mills, and as they say, it's lovely and soft, and I can wear iron wool around my neck. So the attributes of our wool is extraordinary. And then my Donegal tweed trousers, I wanted a huge oversized pair of fashion-forward trousers, and they're unlined and they don't scratch. I mean, Irish wool is just amazing, so it's lovely just to dive headfirst into the luxury and the feel of what it is. And I think right now, for everybody here, for the buyers that are in here, from the international buyers and even the local buyers, the trend for the look of Irish is like right on the button right now, so it's important to support that.
Absolutely. And I think that idea of it puts remote working in a whole different context, doesn't it, when you think about the clack of needles, being able to work in the comfort of your own home and create these beautiful pieces. But that, I suppose that international influence, as you say, coming from these huge fashion houses, and where we're seeing that coming sort of from the top down and then from the ground up and from generations back, Zoe, what you mentioned in terms of what we absorb and learn from generations before us, these powerful influences. And I suppose to you, Eve, in that educational design space and your engagement with both the Wool Hub and the projects that you deliver across the primary, secondary, all the way through to third level, what do you see, I suppose, as the focus in terms of the attitudes from those young learners and people who are wanting to engage in more sustainable practices? And I suppose our role as educators to influence those choices and support them on those journeys.
Yeah, so I suppose first and foremost, the news and the messaging that comes across and that young people actually get hit with on a daily basis is really negative about climate action and disasters, and that the world is burning. But the reality is, when you look at true data sets, actually there's incredible innovation happening, and there's incredible positive, I suppose, things happening in many sectors, and the design sector is one of those. And we created a program a couple of years ago, and actually, Don actually gave a guest speaker appearance. We created a program called Haberdashery, Circular and Sustainable Design Skills, and it's for senior cycle students. It doesn't just focus on wool, but it focused on bio-based materials. And so there's incredible companies all over the world that are doing really amazing things with renewable resources, etc. But Irish wool really falls nicely into that category as well. And what we do is we use a kind of a design sprint, design challenge kind of methodology. So you've got boys and you've got girls and everybody in between, and we're not tying them into any particular area, but they are working on coming up with product ideas that can be for clothing, sportswear, footwear, accessories, etc. So it's really, really open. And what it does is it exposes them to some of the policy things that are happening. It really exposes them to some of the technology and innovation that's happening, but they're doing it in a kind of a fun way, and they don't realize all the amazing information that they're picking up. And what we squeeze in all along the way is, you're the buyers of the future. You're the people that have the purchasing power of the future. You will become very familiar with the kind of terminology of circular economy, of sustainability, bio-based materials, the bioeconomy, things that young people and majority of people may not hear on a daily basis. We just ran our 2024 event a week ago. We had 325 students all together. We had to turn loads of schools away, and Irish wool was very firmly on the agenda that day. We had a wonderful lady with us, Aoife McNamara. She's a fantastic designer there in Limerick, works with Irish wool. And we also bring in other companies to them as well, the science and technology part of it around 3D printing and some of the new things that they can do. So that's how we bring wool into the realm of the younger cohort, and we're hoping to build that program out further as well.
Fantastic. And I think, what you've touched on there is so many areas across, looking at the circular bioeconomy and design, science, technology. And I suppose part and parcel of what the Wool Hub does as a research group is to try and tap into all those areas as well. And Nairi, you visited us last year on a knowledge exchange roadshow and had the opportunity to tour around. And as a researcher yourself, how do you feel, I suppose, the power of this cross-collaboration and cross-disciplinary approach to tackling challenges like, I suppose, the waste issue that we have with materials? It's very much a space that you look at across the board, not solely related to wool, but I suppose, how can we kind of build and band together to go forward for more positive change and impact?
Well, I will say I'm not a researcher. I'm more of the mad professor type. My house has become sort of a working physical lab where in the cellar I've got wool being stored and various buckets of wool that are in various stages of being washed. So I'm a bit of a mad hatter in that aspect. But for me, when it comes to collaboration, it is so key. And that is not just within Ireland, but it is also on a wider scale as well. We have to think that we cannot do it on our own. And that's one thing that I have learned, even as running a business, but also working in this sector as well. The more heads that we can put together, the more people that actually do, but not talk. Because we can all sit here and talk and have a great, great conversation over a cup of tea or a beer or whatever, but we need to be doing, and this is where I see that is so important to build the collaborations with people that will be doing things and actually wanting to take that step and challenge. And whether it is locally within Ireland, and I see that there is huge potential here. You could come back, reclaim, and actually drive the future of wool here in Ireland. And that to me was really exciting and very prominent when I visited. I did 8 days and 1,600 kilometres around the whole of Ireland last November, and saw all parts of the country, and there's just so many pockets of inspiration and people that are doing things, but it is people that really do need to come together. We're a stronger force, and to me that is so key. And for me, being based in Belgium, I see that the international connection, especially as we're in Europe as well, has that bigger impact where we can make a wider difference and not just focus. In Belgium, farmers have the same issue. We have coarse wool. They're burning it. They're incinerating it. They're getting 20 cents per kilo for their wool. So the thing is, same problems are in different places. So the only way that we can really work together is to look at innovation, look at collaboration, and actually go, heck, we may have done it this way, but let's open it wider and be a little bit innovative. The nice thing about innovation and research is that you can change and you can dive. You don't have to say, this is the way we go and this is what we have to do. And that's what I think is so exciting as well, especially here in Ireland.
Yeah, and I think it's through having these conversations and learning from one another, even though we all sort of inhabit this space to some degree. I think across the 3 days, there's been learnings certainly for me, and it's a continuous journey, and one that only through continuing to have the conversations, continuing to engage and collaborate, that we can move forward. So it's
positive. That's
positive.
That's where
and
I
it's really
see it.
exciting, and it's about, I think, just being bold and having that curiosity and willingness to engage and sometimes ask the awkward questions. And but I suppose, the challenges that you face, as you mentioned, similar to some that we are looking into in relation to wool, with sheep's wool being classified as a Category 3 waste byproduct. So I suppose when it comes to research and looking at the value chain of biomaterials like Irish grown wool, we've explored over the last few days the endless possibilities from getting your long staple fibers and creating beautiful garments and homeware, some of which we've seen from other exhibitors here at Showcase, beautiful examples, and Eru, of course, and Don, what you're wearing. And if we look through to the other, I suppose, performative aspects of the fiber, we've seen beautiful functional products for the home, such as pillows and all the different sort of attributes that wool can bring into our day-to-day life. There's an area that we haven't explored in much detail, and that's looking, I suppose, the biorefinery space, Tim, and looking at, I suppose, your world where you work across many different areas, from looking at spent grain to seaweed. So when it comes to the opportunities and what we can harness from wool, I suppose, other than the wearable product, perhaps, what are the potentials there in terms of innovation and development?
Yeah, and I think it might have been Donna I was talking to earlier on about this, that in Ireland we've worked in bioresources, and that's what my research centre predominantly focuses on, is taking bioresources and using them more sustainably, using them in a way to produce something. So seaweed, spent grain, hemp, all these kinds of products. And there's researchers in Ireland who've done work on these kinds of areas for 10, 20, 30, 40 years. So that expertise to research biomass and to identify opportunities for innovation is there, but it's never been applied to wool before. And so with this focus now on wool, there's a massive opportunity there to copy and paste all that expertise and put it onto wool. And for the sector, that's a massive opportunity. For the researchers, from a purely mercenary perspective, it's a great opportunity to bring a bit of novelty to a grant application, because you want to be looking at a different biomass than everybody else, because that's why you're going to get funded. So wool is a massive opportunity in Ireland. Ireland is a great place to do research. Enterprise Ireland are here today. They co-finance our centre. They fund a massive amount of research for Enterprise, but Ireland is a great place to do research. And so there's a massive opportunity there. And so in the context of, say, things like seaweed, seaweed, like wool, is a very recalcitrant, strong material, and it's difficult to get things out. And so if you're going to go to the bother to try and get something out, you need to get lots of things out to make it actually a commercially viable opportunity. Wool is a little bit different to that, but still opportunity there, in that the main material in wool is keratin, so it's a protein. That's about 95% of wool. We have a grant application in with DAFM at the moment that we haven't heard back on yet, but we're keeping our fingers crossed on, that will look at things like optimizing or changing the scouring process, because at the moment the scale that you need to be at in terms of wastewater treatment is a big problem. At a very general level, you need to be scouring about 80,000 tons of wool per year to make the wastewater treatment work from a sustainable perspective, something as kind of boring as wastewater treatment. Ireland does about 6,000 or 7,000 tons of wool a year. People on this panel know a lot more about that than I do. So the scouring piece has to be innovated, it has to be changed. The challenge is there isn't a policy there to support that at the moment, because there isn't a defined X amount that you can measure at the end of the scouring process to say it's clean. It's clean because it's been through a scouring process, but if you change that process, if you reduce what you're doing, if you change the detergent, if you do a dry scouring process, how do you say this wool is now safe and scoured? Because it's a Category 3 animal byproduct, and therefore you need the appropriate licenses. So the policy needs to support the innovation by defining what those endpoints need to be, because once you know what those endpoints are, you can do whatever you like over here in terms of cleaning the wool once you hit those endpoints. So scouring is a piece of what we'll have a look at. We're going to have a look at a piece around composting. Composting is a very straightforward process, but to provide a recipe for farmers that they can follow, that if they don't want to go down the route of using it in these wonderful fabrics that people have here today, that it's 10 kilos of wool and 5 kilos of dry material and 1 kilo of grease trap or whatever, compost it. And then the more sciencey bit that we'll be doing, I should have mentioned Shannon ABC is a collaboration between 2 universities in Ireland, so Munster Technological University and the Technological University of the Shannon, so in old money, IT Tralee and Limerick IT. And so we're going to be looking at extracting out compounds from within the wool. So wool is used at the moment for insulation, for argument's sake. There's a compound called ceramides that are within the wool structure, so you've got lanolin outside the wool, which is used in cosmetics and very good for moisturizing, and that's what it's used for at the moment. But you've got a compound called ceramides in the wool, and there's a pile of cosmetics companies here today that will, again, know a lot more about the ceramides than I do, but they're really good for skin structure and moisturizing ability. We've got a technology that can extract the ceramides out of the wool without damaging the structure. So potentially you can get the ceramides out, use them in cosmetic products, medical device applications, and then still use the wool to go on for insulation. You could potentially extract the keratin out, and again, keratin can be used in medical device structures. There's a researcher in Trinity, Hossein is his name. I would butcher his second name if I tried to attempt it. But he's looked in his PhD at using the keratin from wool as a food ingredient. Keratin is a protein. You can break it down to its amino acids and potentially use it as a food ingredient. I'm very conscious of the panel here today that I'm taking away all their raw material from all the lovely products they want to make. But there's lots of opportunity there, even to the extent of, if you're looking at the coarseness of the Irish wool, that you can enzyme treat it to kind of smooth out the coarseness there. And whether you use fungi to do that and create another product again, or to use the enzymes as a kind of a treatment for it. So there's lots of opportunities there, but fundamentally the policy has to support the innovation from a category 3 animal byproduct perspective, from a scouring perspective, and even from a perspective of, do we look at a protected status for Irish wool in different products, like Aran sweaters, like other kinds of materials, that for it to be designated as X, it needs to contain this amount of Irish wool. Now, there's downstream impact to that in terms of producers and all the rest of it, but you know, there's lots of opportunity there, I suppose. But for me, fundamentally, it's the policy that has to support the innovation to allow people to do more, I suppose. And I know I've rambled on there a fair bit, sorry.
No, it's fantastic, Tim. And if I sort of saw this fantastic lab of all these different wonderful experiments going on with wool fiber and the opportunities that there are to use it far beyond the products, as I say, in the range of cosmetics. And I suppose what we require in cosmetics and things used for skincare is that sort of alchemy and coming together of materials and potentially harnessing the properties of seaweed and wool. You know, these beautiful marriages that, you know, we have on our shores, on our hillsides. And I suppose that alchemy as well as a fashion and textiles designer is something that I've always been drawn to in terms of material. And we've spoken across the last few days about how, you know, the Irish grown wool has certain qualities that lend itself to a range of different outputs. And sometimes it's about finding that alchemy, that marriage, those blends. And I suppose with your experience in the industry, Don, and looking at everything from fine Italian suiting, you know, there's wonderful ways that we can weave other natural fibers and performance fibers with Irish grown wool to create these magical blends. And maybe you'd share some of your
World
thoughts.
again, wool, because I was in the evening wear world, I needed my wool to be specific to an evening wear market. And the wool that I use most it's a silk and wool blend, but the wool, because of its durability and structure that it gives to a fabric, it's a base that's used in a lot of fabrics for durability and heft. And the silk and wool it was, I think, 80 to 90% wool, and then there was a silk face on the surface that gave it this beautiful luster. And in the high end, in the couture evening wear market, that's a sort of a staple fabric that's used across the board. And then in the world of tweeds, in evening wear, there are so many tweeds that are woven with novelty yarns, and the novelties being a lurex or a metallic yarn. And I was speaking with Kieran Malloy earlier about the wools that they're making in Donegal, and they work with, like, he works with Tom Brown in New York, which is another fashion-forward brand, and it's incredible that he's using Irish tweed. And they develop tweeds for them, and they will use metallic yarns and lurex yarns, and that's exciting to know that the Irish market has its parameters, but there are opportunities to extend beyond those parameters into another world of luxury beyond Irish shores that has huge potential for the weavers here at home in Ireland. And then just going back to what Tim was saying about the beauty industry, which is so related to the fashion industry, they walk hand in hand. And again, the lanolin, and I was just curious myself, as of late and researching wool and what the lanolin has with its moisturizing properties. So I just Googled what it does and who has it and who in Ireland is using it. And of course, Kerry Woolen Mills came up immediately with their lanolin hand cream, because apparently there's no one's hand softer than a sheep farmer's hands because of the lanolin that they're in contact with every day. And then there's a brand here that's showing called Bon Or, And Bon Or are using sheep's milk and lanolin to create a brand of skincare and beauty products here. So again, going back to Irish wool, there were so many areas that we can expand into from a fashion forward point of view, with luxury fashion, high fashion. And I don't know if I mentioned earlier, but just going back to Rafe Simons using the wool at Prada, the reason he did it, he wanted to go back to nature. He wanted to take the Prada customer back sort of out of the office environment and re-immerse them in nature. And the whole show, they spent a fortune on it. It was a giant plexiglass floor on which all of the buyers sat. And there was a little river running under them with a whole country landscape of live plants underneath the show as the show was taking place to really ground the buyers in nature. And there's no place else in the world that I think that nature is more abundant than here in Ireland with our natural environment and our wool industry. And I just think, again, it's that zeitgeist moment to sort of seize the opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and to tell that story, a story that I think at Eru you're telling so beautifully, and part of that is for your customer to bring them on the journey, but a big part of that is speaking with industry and that engagement and collaboration piece. One of the things you mentioned is that when you talked to Chris Weiniger of Donegal Yarns, that he got it and he got you guys, and that's what it's all about, is being able to have these conversations. And I suppose when it comes to then being able to develop product with the expertise of the likes of Malloy and Sons and knitters like Amber, we've got this absolutely rich talent pool and knowledge to engage with. So how important has that collaboration been for these beautiful products that we've seen develop over the last year?
Yeah, it's been absolutely critical, because like myself and Lionel, my partner, he's a sheep farmer and businessman, but we have no experience of fashion and textile world, or weaving, or knitting. We're kind of black sheep, in a way. And we went out like on our own with like feeling so alone, thinking we're doing a mad thing here. I had researched farmers on my own, found wool, sent it to the UK, not connected with any bodies that were, knew more than this. Met Lionel, we created this blend, we created our farm to yarn networks, and we were like, all the time, why is nobody doing this? Why are we the only ones doing it? Are we mad? And then when we connected with people who are actually experts in working with fibers, it was such a joy, because we had something that they didn't have access to, or had been diverged, the paths had been diverged, and we needed something that they were expert at. So when we went to Chris to weave or to spin our wool, that was a big piece for us, because we thought we'd have to go to the UK to do it. And Chris was so welcoming, Donegal Yarns were so welcoming and so delighted to get an Irish wool. They were so excited that we had found this blend. And then they took it to perfection. They spun it into the beautiful yarn that we have today. They taught us what the best way to spin it is. And then we took it to experts like Anne Byrne, who does all our knitwear. She's worked for 40 years in the industry. She does all Lainey Keogh's knitwear. She's worked with luxury fibers all her life. And she was like, I've never seen an Irish yarn like this for decades. And we were like, this is amazing. But again, just meeting these kind of the meeting points, so then she was able to tell us, okay, this stitch is the best way to get the best out of this yarn. And like the Malloys as well, to weave it. Again, they were like, oh, an Irish yarn, like a fully Irish yarn. This is, so interesting. And none of us ever knew what way it's going to come out until it came out. And I remember I was so nervous. I was actually having nightmares about getting the woven wool back, because, you have to order like a minimum quantity for a run like this. It's expensive, and you're investing all your kind of business in it. And I was having nightmares that I got it back and it was feeling rough, or, and I was like, Kieran, what's it like? And he was like, it's actually amazing, And he was like, we're actually surprised how amazing it is. And I was like, I'm surprised too. And anyone is welcome to feel it. It continues to surprise us. And the same, turning it into an Aran knit, it's perfect. So it's been critical for us to rely on the experts. And that's, like I said, this kind of equation, we had these perfect pieces, but now we're starting to work together. You know, these pieces on their own work amazing with the weavers and the knitters and the spinners, and then now bringing the Irish wool back into this equation. I think that's the magic. You know, that's where we have this opportunity on the world stage, like you've been speaking about, and the opportunity in all the other industries that wool can go into. And, you know, we really have to grab that, like we were saying, like all hold hands together and step forward, you know, because we were the world leaders in this, and the blueprint is there, you know. So I really believe we have that opportunity.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think it's so exciting to think of that moving forward together in the next phase of your journey with the mill going ahead. And I suppose one of the aspects that Tim touched on is that stumbling block around scouring at the moment. And Nairi, I know this is your focus area, and I suppose in like sort of an interim period while we're looking to push and drive that focus back onto the island to be able to facilitate all of this wonderful work that's happening. What are some of the learnings that you found through applying that sort of circular thinking to the scouring process in order to make it not only viable, but a really sustainable way of dealing with our wool?
I think what we need to do when it comes to the wool is look at the whole fleece together. At the moment, we take the bum and the head and we split it up and it all goes in its own direction. We lose 45 to 50, even 60% of that fleece already because people treat that as a waste. And to me, you know, with the ability that you can take lanolin from it, you can use it for other uses, you can use it for other bio uses. Let's look at the fleece holistically. Let's look at the pieces that we can then use in the direction, like the head bits could be used for your felting or your insulation, and your clippings and your shorter cuts could actually be used for something else. And that's where we get the more potential out of the fleece. Absolutely. And that is what I have found when I've been washing and carding the wool for designers in Belgium, is that I give them the wool that they want, all carded and ready to go, but then I give them the other bags. And when they first receive these bags, they go, "What do we do with this? You know, what's this for?" And I say, I'm challenging you also as a designer to see how you can use this material in a different way. And a lot of them have come back and said, hey, we felted with it. We've actually used it as filling. I've got a lanyard which is actually filled with Belgian wool. And it's not looking at just treating wool as your auntie's socks and your uncle's sweater, for example. It's really looking on an outward scale and the diverse applications that it can be used for. And that's not just within the fashion industry. It's also within the automobile. It's within the packaging industry. It's within the agricultural sector. So there's multiple uses. It's just we need to be not rigid anymore. We need to be flowing like a tree. And I think that is so, so important.
Absolutely.
And that's what I have learned, that, you know, if we challenge, that enables wool to then also be challenged and pushed even further. Because if we still stay in the way we are, I'm being pessimistic now, but if we stay the way we are, we're going to be here the same in 10 years' time. Yeah, we might have sat here and what I said, I want to stop talking, I want to be doing. And this is where I see that we can really take forward.
Absolutely, yeah. By acknowledging, you know, the full value chain across the whole the whole fleece. And you've been working on a lovely project recently, which is bringing comfort to people who are certainly at this time of the year not doing terribly well and may not even have roofs over their heads. And you might share a little bit of that project.
I took some of the waste wool, I call it the valued wool as well, because it is still part of the fleece, and I have felted it into woolen pads. And I've actually donated 286 pads to a local homeless charity in Brussels. They are an organisation that's privately funded. They offer showering and washing of clothing for people. But these woolen pads, we've actually got the people to put them in their gloves and in their shoes and also in their body parts as well, to actually give them the additional heat when they're on the street to keep them warm. And you know, that wool would have otherwise been thrown away. It's actually given a purpose and a use for people. And they're actually coming back and going, oh, can you redesign them in slightly like this, or to fit in our shoes better, or can we put them around our neck? Oops, I'm knocking my headset. It's me getting energetic and overexcited. But to me, it is, it's a use, and why can't we not use the wool that we've got, and not just think that it is for sweaters, jumpers, skirts, trousers, and so forth. It's got multiple uses. And that's what I love about wool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Absolutely. It is. It's a wonder fibre. And I know from a recent visit that you paid to Donegal Yarns, Eve, that in terms of looking at that, as Nairi said, what we would term waste, but is actually potentially a new resource stream. You worked with Chris and gathered some of the mill waste to work on projects with some of your students across different innovative design sprints and challenges.
Yeah, so I suppose research and innovation comes in different guises. There's the incredible work that can be done in the labs, like that Shannon ABC conducts. And then there's more sort of on the ground, changes to business processes or whatnot that can be done. So we worked with Donegal Yarns, and you've heard their name mentioned many times here today. And I suppose they want to really promote, I suppose, they're extremely focused on circularity and sustainability, and how could they actually begin to demonstrate that? So from MTU, we worked with them, and we, through site visits and through investigation and through speaking to the staff, actually was where all the answers actually came from. We realised that through the different processes, you'll see Zoe put up a picture there of the mills and all the different stages that the wool is going through. But you're losing bits of wool all along that process. And there's one specific category called condenser wool waste that would amount to 37% of the waste from Donegal Yarns. They had nowhere to do anything with it in Ireland, and it was basically being just shipped off over to the UK, where you've got the large merchants over there, and they use it for all sorts of things. So we worked with them over a period of a few months. We went back through all of their ordering. We did an analysis of all of the production that they'd been doing, all the different colour runs that they'd been doing, and really mapped it out. So there was a bit of work in it to begin with. And what we were able to do with them then is they took that condenser waste wool, which was multicoloured because they're running all different colour runs, and through a process of experimentation and testing, a bit of research, they came out with 3 blends out of that. These beautiful sort of blues and grey hues. So they're 100% recycled. They have different kind of, I suppose, properties to them, but all can be used for clothing. And then we've connected in with Paul Galvin and Aoife McNamara, who are in the clothing industry, to see, all right, well, how can we use that now beautiful recycled wool that was literally being shipped off they were getting nothing for it. It had to be it was just being collected by a UK company. And now they've got this beautiful recycled product that they can now sell and promote and create into a new product. So we're hoping that we're going to see something come out of that. We might get Don involved.
Future collaborations.
Yeah, so that they have now within their product range, they're able to say this is 100% recycled, and it's beautiful. I felt it. It's fabulous. Yeah, beautiful. So.
Wonderful. Fantastic. Yeah, so exciting to hear the new innovations and projects and things that will hopefully spring from these conversations that we've been having over the last few days as well. And I suppose one of the things that has come up across the last few days has been sort of aspects of traceability and certification and I suppose coming back to you, Zoe, with Eru and that value of accreditation in terms of sort of the brand and how you can communicate your story to your customer. How do you see things evolving for you in that space going forward, and where does the value lie for you when it comes to that sort of traceability that you communicate obviously so clearly through the beautiful material that we saw, but as we look to a future where product passports coming down the line and that real curiosity from the consumer as to where our products are coming from?
Yeah, well, we've done that with food already, so why don't we do that with our clothing, And I think that the more of that I think part of what's happened with fast fashion and everything is the disassociation from ourselves to the value of the clothing, partly because we don't know where it comes from. So when you don't know, you don't think, you don't go on that journey, and then you don't appreciate, and then you don't value, and then you devalue and throw away these, kind of this fast fashion. But when you actually know where your food comes from, that this egg was by this chicken in this farm, you really enjoy that egg, you know what I mean? And you make it in a nice way. And we've just not done that so much with the clothes, so why not? I know there's really exciting things happening with traceability studies that you guys are a part of, and I just see that as a win-win. Like a win for the farmer, a win for the wearer, a win for the maker, and even though we can't change the landscape tomorrow, like this is a journey of making things more circular, making things more closer to home. But even to know where it comes from, if it comes from abroad, and then you can make a choice. Like.
Can I also just add to Zoe? One thing that's really important is consumer support at the pricing level, because this product is expensive to make. And in order for the sheep farmer to get a fair price for his wool, Zoe and all the consumers here have to pay more for that wool, which makes their wool more expensive. Therefore, when the buyers come to buy it, it's a premium price that you need for, there is the story, there is the traceability, but it comes at a price. And it's an important price, and I think we need to also educate our consumers that they need to pay a little more for this beautiful product that comes at a cost, and it comes at a cost for a reason. So we're all playing our part to help the environment, and we're being resourceful, and it is about circularity, and it's about responsibility, and it's about moving forward. But the consumer needs to realize, and the market in general needs to realize, that it costs money, and it needs to be supported. And one of the, what we're wearing here today, and what's being manufactured here today, these are durable items that will last for a long time. Mm-hmm. So it's not about the mass market and mass production, but it's about items that are special. They have a story, they have a history, it's something that you treasure, and maybe you keep it in your wardrobe for 30 years, and I don't want to freak out the suppliers here, but we will buy a few more anyway. But the idea is it does cost more. And I think when the buyers today walk onto a stand and something costs 100 euros more, you need to understand why it is 100 euros more. And you need to support these artisans that are making these pieces and putting in all of this effort and research for an industry that is saving our future. But it comes at a cost, and it has to be paid for, and the consumer needs to know the reason they're spending another $200 or $300 on an Irish wool blanket or on a beautiful baby shawl. There's a reason for that, and they need to know that, and they need to be willing to support it for all of this to really work.
Yeah, thank you so much. Because, I think if we were really honest and really did the maths, like I say to people, our pieces are investment pieces. Where can you buy something that improves with wear? Our pieces improve with wear. It's rare, but we're just not used to that. We've been programmed in a way. It's not one person's fault. It's a collective thing that's happened to our society. But what has that done? It's damaged the planet. It causes a lot of human slavery, essentially really bad stories, mass production. And we have an opportunity to reprogram ourselves. But like you say, Donna, it takes kind of collective choices to make those decisions. I said to a buyer yesterday, he was saying, the price, and I was saying, but would your customers in America, if they understood that they were actually supporting, Irish farmers, they were actually creating more of a demand, they were giving them more incentive, and this is a fact, this is not a sales talk, this is an actual fact, would that influence their buying? If you presented them with that option in your store, even though it might not be quite like anything else you have on your shelves. And he was like, yeah.
I think storytelling is important. And I think one of our great gifts here in Ireland, we all have a gift for storytelling. And we tell beautiful stories, and people get wrapped up in the romance of our stories. But our stories are authentic. Like, this is a beautiful new story that's being born here, and it's 100% authentic. And authenticity, we can transmit that authenticity from the maker to the buyer that's buying it, and that buyer can transmit that story to the customer. So the storytelling is really important as part of the branding and the selling and the and the circular economy as a whole, just the storytelling, just to keep it all going, and you tell your story beautifully.
I sometimes I just need to,
No, no.
stop talking.
Just add and say that it's not just the consumer, it's also we have to even go back to the industry, because the industry have to really understand, like the buyer, if you hadn't told him or her that aspect, they wouldn't have taken it into account. And to me, the consumer, I think, do get it. But the thing is, it's the industry, and I've worked as a buyer and also as a seller and sourcing textiles for designers. And I've had designers saying, we're not going to pay anything more than €3 a metre. And they go, we don't care whether it's organic or fair trade or regen or anything. We have to pay €3 a metre for us to be able to produce an item of clothing at €600 a metre, at €600 finish. We want to make sure that our margins are 300 to 500% markup. And that is the problem. It's the industry that really needs to know the value of what they are, because ultimately it goes back to the farmers, because the farmers are squeezed, then it goes back to the farmers and they can't actually source and work with their livestock and their land in a better way. And if you get the industry, the consumers will follow. But the industry are the ones that really need to take the push and have an understanding of how things are produced.
Yeah.
Because in the last 20, 30 years that I've been working in this sector, it's always, well, we've got a price pump, we've got to pay our investors, our people that are part on the board, and they want the money. And it's not just in the fashion or the design industry, it's right across the whole sector. It's always the people that want to get that extra bit.
Yeah. And I just want to say the farmers are so willing,
Yes.
because everything goes back to this source, and that my heart is always with the farmers, because they are the ones that the industry dropped, essentially. They were always, breeding sheep, doing their thing. And when the prices bottomed out, they were at a loss. And then they're expected to produce fine fiber when there is no money to do that.
That's it.
And then it's almost, but we go out to the farmers and we're like, we want to pay you this. Can you do a bit better? Can you not let the sheep go into the hay when we're shearing? I'm very unagricultural there in my explanation. But they're so willing, and we're even like, would you be willing to have these other breeds? And they're like, yeah, just tell us, so there's so much willingness.
Yeah, to be, for everybody to play a key part in the story. I think,
and we're
and to have
designed
representation across all.
Exactly, and in Ireland, we are designed to work with wool. We have the sheep, we have the land, we have the amazing farmers. We are designed to do this,
I think that's a wonderful note to open to our floor on. And, maybe just a closing note to say that I'm aware that Don is looking at, you're focused on your autobiography, I believe, at the moment. And hopefully we see a chapter for Irish-grown wool in there, perhaps. part of the story as it evolves. But I'd like to say a huge thank you to the panelists who shared their insights and expertise today. We've got a roving mic that's with Celine, so I'd encourage you, if you've had questions that have cropped up, please do.
I hope this is working. First of all, thank you to the panel. That was really fascinating. It's lovely to see such a range of knowledge as well. My own question would be probably more for you, Tim. I represent 250 farmers from Connemara. The wool that we have is not for the fashion industry, but what we're researching is, as well as composting, we got seed funding to make a solid material. So it's a plastic alternative from wool. The problem is scouring. So have we researched UV or heat, dry scouring?
So the short answer is probably not. The longer answer is the boring one, which goes back to policy. And so if you use UV or heat would probably be fine, to be honest, in terms of inactivating whatever's there. And the classification of wool as a Class 3 animal byproduct is probably a bit of a hangover to foot and mouth and CJG and all the rest of it. And any of those particular issues would be dealt with primarily by heat, depending on the temperature and how it's going to affect the wool and all the rest of it. But the biggest challenge is that when you heat treat it or UV treat it, what defines it as being clean? And there's no measure for that at the moment.
Yeah.
And so we are engaging with the Department of Agriculture at the moment to see what we can do around that. And it may be that the answer comes back and says, no, it has to be done like this, and that's fine. But once there's a measure there that says it's X, Y, or Z, people can innovate back away from that to try and achieve that. And maybe it's a bit of a combination of heat and UV. Maybe it's an initial wash just to get rid of some of the worst stuff kind of thing. But it's having that bit at the end. There's lots of different work that the various research centres around the country can help with on that. There's a massive amount of support, as I say, from Enterprise Ireland and other funding agencies to support that kind of activity. And so certainly happy to have a chat afterwards around the kind of work that could be done around that, even in terms of that initial sanity check around it. That if you were to take parasites, proteins, prions, whatever it is, measure what they are at the end of a normal scouring process, measure what they are at the end of your process, and at least you'd know then, are we there or thereabouts, or are we so far off there's no point? Or the heat that we use on the wool, it destroys it or whatever it is, even though obviously wool is a very recalcitrant material.
Yeah.
But definitely worth a conversation anyway.
That's brilliant, because that is the other stumbling block, is the research, because National Parks and Wildlife, Coillte, Board Namona, all will use these products for bog restoration if I can prove that it's not going to be leaching into water or anything. So I'd love to have that chat, but
No,
thanks a million.
Just a little note as well to say that if you hadn't had an opportunity to join us for the last couple of talks over the past day, Alison Galt from the Ulster University had some beautiful examples of wool hemp composites. So in terms of that solid wool space, and if that's something that you're interested in checking out, do watch back. And that's available for everybody to view on the Irish Grown Wool Council website. So just to finish up on that. And any other questions from the audience? Deborah?
I know that Tim has identified the issues that we have, and I won't reiterate them, but I'd like to speak to quantity. And we're not trying to solve the wool problems of the world. We're just trying to solve the wool problem that as we see it in Ireland. And if we speak to quantity, and back to what what you were saying, we really need to think about, we have a parallel with honey. We need to think about Manuka honey and how New Zealand, for example, managed to produce honey that essentially has an equivalent to Irish produced honey, but they were able to market it because they were able to highlight those exact qualities, Zoe, that you're speaking about. And so in our looking at quantity, we can justify the cost of the wool because of its source, quality, and its constituent parts. We all know what they are, say wool all around the world, but Irish wool and why. But again, one of the things, how much wool do we have? How much wool do we need to sell? So in a way, I suppose quality is being dealt with to a certain extent. That the Irish Grown Wool Council is working on elements of that. But really, you don't have to justify, you just have to find the language around the quality. And the government and other agencies in this country have to find the language around quality and getting it there. We know that there are the farmers out there. We know there are the breeds out there. There are a few stuck areas, and Tim sort of identified them in his summary. And really, you have to just continue doing what you're doing because you're a champion. And Dan, the same thing. You're a champion with a different set of resources now. And so the quality can go on with its story, but the quantity needs the help. That would be my opinion. I don't know if anyone on the panel would like to just say a couple of words about that.
And again, I'm a dub, so what I know about sheep farming could probably be written on the back of the mic stand behind me kind of thing. But from being immersed in the sector and getting to talk to so many different people over the last number of years doing this in the Irish Grown Wool Council and the Wool Hub, I think that the stories from Eru, from Zoe and Lionel, and from Fergal, who is the organic sheep farmer here on Monday, from Blonid and people like that, where they're demonstrating that there's an opportunity there. The feeling that I got from engaging with some of the farmers is they're disillusioned with the entire structure. And so therefore, what's the point, because we don't get the money? And so I think it's that demonstration, as you say, championing Irish wool, as the guys in IRU are, and demonstrating that the model is there. It's going to be, I think, reasonably slow, but I think fundamentally there's a disillusionment from the farmers in terms of what that model is and how they get money for it. Ultimately, it does go back to it's going to cost more to give them value, and so it's identifying the opportunities for those higher value products, where the stories are there to demonstrate why there should be higher value. That's great, but I would imagine there's a breadth of farmers there who don't have either the same breeds or the same story to be able to demonstrate that greater value. And then it's up to, well, not up to, but I think it's being supported by companies like Donegal Yarns and others who are looking at other ways to utilize the wool in composites. I was talking to Chris earlier on, and to yourself, Nairi, as well, you know, Jaguar Land Rover having biocomposites in their cars, what value can you associate with that? And so I think there's a twin track approach there in terms of identifying that higher value for those bespoke, not bespoke pieces, but really quality pieces. But then for the farmers who may not have the same kind of wool or story, it's providing that route to market that they can buy into. And that's going to take a little bit of time.
I would just add, you're using the right wool for the right job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a
Sorry.
much more eloquent way of putting it, in fairness. Yeah.
And then
Don't
there is
beat
the
around the bush.
opportunity,
You know, it is to use the right wool for the right job and to really know the wool and what the wool can actually do. Because I've got wool in Belgium from a very, very coarse, we've got coarse wool in Belgium that is also known to be somewhat itchy and scratchy. But the thing is, that turns into wonderful felting wool. It's also great source as lanolin. It actually can also be used as peat logs. It actually can be used for agricultural use. It can go into packaging. And then it's like, okay, the more swifter and the textile wools that actually can be great for fashion and yarn use. So it is really knowing the right breed and the right wool and then the right parts of the wool. It's looking at the sheep completely holistically, I think, is the key. You know, and I've said that already, but to me, if we know our sheep, we know our wool, and also getting the wool tested, because that's why I'm saying that farmers need to know what micron count it is, what usage that it can be used for, and being that open-minded and say, let's try something different. Because, you know, wool, I don't think we've even touched the top layer of the surface of wool in terms of the capacity that it has across many industries and uses and applications. I'll say no more. I just get excited about wool.
Yeah. But it's true, that's why the ideal situation, and for the farmers and for everyone, is that we identify, because like we can't turn all the farmers into the sheep that we need for our Airuz products. That would be unbalanced. But currently we're unbalanced anyway, because everything went into meat. So, you know, so the ideal situation is that we can identify the right sheep for the right product, and those farmers are getting the right price, because it's all of value. And then we can, you know, champion the right methods and products to bring that value to things, you know, like we've done for Eru and everything, you know, so then there'll be the correct diversity across across all of the breeding.
Yeah, because I know there's farmers in Belgium, and I'm sorry referring to Belgium, but he's got 200 sheep. He's having to pay 6,000 euros in carbon emissions a year for his 200 sheep. He then has to pay his shearers anything between 3 to 5 euros per head just to shear. You calculate that, at the moment, he's getting 0.04 cents to anything up to 20 cents per kilo. He's at a negative. There's a sheep farmer in OK in Australia who I know, he's 25 million euro in debt. He has not been paid or increased his salary in the last 15 years. And this is why you can understand that people are walking away from the industry as well, that it's not necessarily the consumers, and I go back to the industry, it's the industry are the ones that are causing the non-positive ripples on the farmers to actually stop the farming. Farmers, if we don't have farmers, whether they're sheep, land, we're screwed.
Yeah.
To be in a negative aspect, but on a positive, we can do something about it. And that's the beauty of what you can do here in Ireland. I think it's so, so, so key.
Fantastic.
We need to love our farmers, that's it.
Yeah.
Especially the sheep ones, dare I say. But yeah.
And wins for wool, I think, across all areas, as we've demonstrated, from bedding, from insulation, from the beautiful Rhyme Studio rugs we looked at on Sunday, through to the beautiful Eru products here, and your own beautiful garments, Don. So I think, you know, we've seen the capabilities, the versatility, and hopefully everybody who's attended the talks over the last few days and has an opportunity to engage in some way, be part of the conversation, be emboldened to work with Irish Grown Wool, discover a little bit more, approach some of our panel, engage in research, collaborate, because I think it's that collective energy that's going to continue to build on what is already a positive story, and to keep that energy behind it. So again, I'd like to say a huge thank you to you all. I'd like to welcome Patrick Byrne to the stage, just to say a few thanks to the Design and Crafts Council, who've been fantastic in supporting this important conversation. Patrick.
Hello, can you hear me? Very good. It just falls to me as the chairman of the Irish Grown Wool Council to bring matters to a close. We've had 3 really good days here now, and really fantastic facilitation by Rebecca, but made easy by really good quality panellists. Every day, one better than the other. I want to, first of all, in terms of the thanks, say thanks to Tom and Celine and the whole team at DCCI for giving us the opportunity. The steer that Tom gave us was, let's look at the past, present and future of Irish grown wool. The good news there is it's a back to the future story, in that we've had past glories. I grew up near Youghal in County Cork that had a huge carpet making and textile industry that's been dead for decades. So we're going back to the future, tackling the challenges that we currently have and turning them into opportunities, and we should have a glorious future ahead of us again. But the key is, the back to the future is with the innovation that the scientists and the other people are bringing. We won't recreate the value in Irish wool the way we did it 30 years ago. I suppose before I get into formal thanks, we need to keep focusing on the common things that we've come across is circularity and collaboration. I suppose 3 years ago, myself and a group formed a consortium to tender for the study for the Department of Agriculture, and then we collaborated to do a good report. And you know what it said is, this is a circular bioeconomy opportunity to turn wool from a waste product into a high value asset for the future. The other piece of the circularity is, our message is that we want to create value in the value chains right through wool, both domestically and internationally. But if it's going to work, as Sophie, as the guys have been saying, it's got to create value for the primary producer. If it doesn't get back, then the circularity is broken, and we probably won't achieve. So people representing Farmers Group in Connemara or whatever, that's what we're actually all about. We're just the leading edge. So that's it in terms of the whole thing. I would like to thank Catherine and Deborah here, who really made all this come together in collaboration with Tom and Orla from DCCI. We only really got a clear head word on this around Christmas. So what's been achieved in the month of January, including our new Irish Grown Wool logo and branding has been created, and a website has been launched. So anyone wants to read more about it, and all these talks will be on it, irishgrownwoolcouncil.com, and it's all up there and all the messages. We have a serious campaign for 2024, both in terms of education program for shearers and farmers on how to shear and handle and roll the wool properly, so that when it goes to the co-ops or the merchants, they're starting with good quality wool, and the rubbish has been taken out to moisten the plants in the farmer's garden. So all that's working really well. So without any further ado, I would just like to say, in terms of the person who brought it all together with some aplomb, was Rebecca. So Catherine, of course, thought to get a present for Rebecca. So
you're very good, guys. Thank you.
So folks, I won't go on. Just say thanks very much to everyone for the interest. I've spread some brochures around the building saying to people making lovely woolen products at the moment, bear with us over the next few years, and hopefully more of those products will be made with Irish grown wool, not necessarily imported from around the world. Thanks very much for your attention.